only three entities that most businesses need to look at, and those are a sole proprietorship, and a limited liability company, and a corporation. Really, all of the other entities generally are not a good fit for most small business owners. A corporation is really only good for a small business company that in the future or immediately is going to be looking for investments from angel investors or from venture capitalists, or if they're thinking of having like a stock option plan or restricted stock or an employee stock ownership plan, then they want to go with a corporation. But most small business owners, they don't have any of those needs. And so that really just narrows the choices down to two, which is being a sole proprietor or a limited liability company. There's really 6 reasons to have an LLC. The first reason is if you have a partner. And the second one is if you have employees. The third is if the LLC is going to be signing contracts. The fourth reason is if the LLC has business assets that they want to protect. And then the fifth reason would be is you don't have any of those other 4 things, but in the near future you're going to have one of those 4 things, then it might make sense to just go ahead and set up the LLC right now rather than starting your business, and then you have all of this legacy that essentially you have to transfer over to the LLC when you create it. And then the 6th reason has to do with taxes. You can elect to be taxed like an S corporation, and that will save you on some self-employment taxes, which I'll explain. If you don't have employees, and if you don't have contracts, and if you don't have a partner, and you don't really have business assets, it's really just you and maybe a laptop, and you're working out of your home, and that's it, then generally a limited liability company isn't going to do much for you. And so in that case, you could be a sole proprietor. A partnership, a lot of people don't realize that if 2 of you go into business together for profit and you get a business license and you don't do anything else, then you're automatically a partnership. And one of the reasons that you really should never be a partnership is that if your partner is negligent or causes harm to somebody else, you're liable for your partner's negligence. And whereas if you're in an LLC, if your partner messes up and harms somebody, then the LLC is going to be on the hook for that negligence, but you won't be personally on the hook. So all of your personal assets, such as your home and your savings and your cars and boats and all that kind of stuff, are going to be protected from your partner's acts. So if you're ever going into business with somebody else, typically it's a good idea to go ahead and form an LLC for that. There's different types of licenses. You have your business license, which every business needs to have, and then you have your professional licenses, and then some boroughs or they also require you to get a license to do business there. And so the business license is that as soon as you go into business, whether you're a sole proprietor, a limited liability company, a corporation, a partnership, limited partnership, all these different types of business structures out there, no matter what you do, you have to go to the state of Alaska and get a business license if you're going to do business in the state of Alaska. So that's business licenses. As for professional license, there's a whole list of professions out there that have to get a professional license, whether you're a contractor, a hairdresser, or I think even acupuncturist. there's a number of licenses out there that you have to have your professional license. And before you can get a business license for that profession, you have to get your professional license. And then once you have the professional license, then you can go ahead and get your business license. Intellectual property is really broken down into 4 categories. The first category, you have copyright. The next is trademark. The third is patent. And then the last would be trade secrets. And so each one, the copyright really protects a creative work, something like a book, a song, artwork. It can even be things like jewelry. And software code does fall into that, but does need a little bit of extra protection in written agreements. The second one, trademark, is something that identifies your goods and services. The best way to think of it is like a logo. And the third one is patents, and that's an invention, an idea, something that has never been thought of before. And the inventor actually goes out and creates the invention. And then the last one is just trade secrets. And a trade secret is something that only the business knows. And usually it's kept secret under a confidentiality agreement. So to give you an example, Coca-Cola, their formula is a trade secret that they hold and protect with everything that they can. And the name Coca-Cola is their trademark. And copyright would be if they created some sort of commercial and that was an original creative work, then that would be fall along the lines of copyright. The biggest pitfalls is ignoring what they need to do for the legal compliance of things, and such as getting their business licenses, forming their legal entities, and making those decisions up front, rather than just going full bore into their business and realizing that they need to kind of back up and then do things that are right. And other things would be like having good written contracts in place that they have with their customers and with their clients. And I would suggest having those vetted by an attorney. And I know I'm biased with that, but I've seen contracts that companies try to do themselves, and often certain things are missed within those agreements. And then as they start to hire employees, having offer letters in place, having an employee handbook in place. And those are 2 critical things, especially in this litigious world. There's a lot of employment, wrongful discharge, those sorts of complaints that are filed against companies, and those documents can go a long way to protect them. One thing that I see is, especially with intellectual property, is that somebody has an idea or they want somebody to design something for them, and so they get a friend or they go out to an agency to have them create that for them. And often people don't realize that if you hire somebody to create something for you, that person owns that copyright. You just have a license to use it. And so if you want to make sure that you own whatever that person creates for you, then you have to have a written agreement that has what's called a work for hire provision in there, and then also a clause that assigns that interest over. And if you're going to hire employees who are going to be doing creative work for you, or software development, or things that might be patentable, then it's good to have an intellectual property agreement with that employee, just stating that anything that they create, any inventions that they create, belong to the company, and that any other creative work or anything else that they do is assigned over to the employer. And I mean, there's some cases where they don't have to do it, but it's just good to kind of have the bootstrap and suspenders, in place to cover all of those things. The main thing would be to make sure that you have a good team in place. And when I talk about a team, um, make sure that they have a good CPA, have a lawyer on their team, somebody who knows marketing, advertising. It's always good to have a good relationship with a banker, and then also the tax and the CPA kind of go into play. But if you have a good team, and just because you're a rural entrepreneur, and there may not be those sorts of resources, in this day and age, it is so easy to do things over the internet that if you're looking for somebody, to be on your team, all the communication, all the documents and everything can all be done over the internet. So if I were a rural entrepreneur, I wouldn't let that impede what I'm trying to do, just to make sure that you've got all those people on your team.